Also coming from the NIH and NIH, we have Michael Duvenage. He's project manager at also at the Office of Cyber Infrastructure and Computational Biology, and he will compare a few critical aspects of REDCap and DFdiscover, online versus offline functionalities. So Michael, I think you already have the control, so feel free to share your screen.
Before I start this evening, everyone, I wanted to tell you that I'm going to do this, or rather have this conversation to my couch. And I thought it would be appropriate from my couch with my team, or should I say therapy sessions with my team. I'm joking. So this evening, I wanted to talk about REDCap versus DFdiscover. It would be nice if team members or people who's joined the conference maybe just raise their electronic hands, because I would love to understand how many teams. I would love if you can quickly raise your electronic if you have this DFdiscover experience, but I want to understand REDCap. So let me see that quickly. Mm-hmm. Wonderful, thank you for that. So before I start this evening, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Michael Duvenage. I'm a project manager. I'm within the IBRSP team. That's the International Biomedical Research Support Program. And we work within OCICB. That's the Office of Cyber Infrastructure and Computational Biology within NIAID. And that's a lot, right? So what do we do? And we provide IT services on behalf of research projects jointly operated by the NIAID. So for example, we provide infrastructure in terms of networking, computing facilities, storage facilities, as well as collaboration tools. So that's where I come involved, like clinical data management systems, sampling management systems, biometrics, as well as temperature monitoring systems. I think this is my 22nd year doing this job. I kind of stopped counting after 20, so like 22nd, I still love what I do. So let's have a conversation today about REDCap versus DFdiscover. So just to put this into context, we have about 79 DFdiscover projects that we currently host, about 700 active users, and 4 of those studies are currently hosted in DFCollect. I want to caveat this a little bit because we have archived many projects, so 79 currently, but we have hosted a lot more. For REDCap, it's about 30 projects at the moment with 300 active users. And what does our program support? We support clinical data, laboratory data, freezer, as well as specimen management. We do some imaging data, temperature monitoring, as I said, biometrics, as well as survey and electronic patient-reported outcomes. We chose to do this conversation of both DFdiscover as well as REDCap, and we compared both DFExplore as well as DFCollect against the REDCap online database as well as the REDCap mobile app. And there were various specifications that we looked at while we did this comparison. And I want to say that this presentation can be boring. I'm hoping that I can engage you with some of our findings. So I'm going to talk about
Michael.
Computer system validation.
Michael, sorry, I need to interrupt you. Sorry, Michael. Yeah, yes. It seems that you're breaking intermittently. So Can you consider turn off your video just in case we can hear you better?
Perfect.
Sorry. We know that you are in your coat, in your sofa, so that's okay. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'll let you know if at some point we're not.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. So I'm going to get back to computer system validation, and I'm going to compare DFdiscover versus REDCap. And you'll see on the left-hand side that the one thing that is really nice for DFdiscover is that you have this ATK that I think everyone is familiar with. It's a validation protocol provided by DFnet, and it's really easy to implement almost out-of-the-box validation for installation qualification as well as operational qualification. I want to add on, and it's kind of controversial, that just because we have this ATK, it doesn't mean that you cannot have computer system validation protocols and with robust user functional testing scripts, as well as, well, that's implemented really for your installation of DFdiscover. When we compared that to REDCap, there wasn't software validation protocols readily available by Vanderbilt, at least not for the most current versions of REDCap. There were some informal validation protocols available for older versions of REDCap on the community site, but there wasn't any available for the current version of REDCap. Again, it's important that just you also need to have computer system validation SOPs for ATK available for. Additionally, REDCap releases frequent updates, kind of, well, almost weekly, and all of those require CSV. Talking about 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, from a technical requirement, DFdiscover really complies to all of the necessary 21 CFR Part 11 requirements. We didn't find anything that was problematic. But I want to say that SOPs are still required for ensuring you use the system correctly. It's very important that just because the system complies to 21 CFR Part 11 from a technical perspective, you still need to have the SOPs that speak to how to use and manage that system appropriately. When it comes to REDCap, we didn't find any items where REDCap did not comply to 21 CFR Part 11, at least for the online version of REDCap. In our installation, we did identify an issue that's really specific for our environment, where the electronic signature plugin was storing the username and the password within your Google badge. So that was problematic, and you could sign in without re-identifying yourself. When it comes to the REDCap mobile app, there are some questions with regard to 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. One of the items that needs to be captured as part of an audit trail is reasons for data changes. And when you use the REDCap mobile app, you do not need to put in any reasons for data changes. So from our perspective, that is really problematic. And obviously for REDCap, you still need to have SOPs for the use of that system. Quickly talking about audit trails, within DFdiscover, the audit trails are located in context to the actual items, as well as within the CRF pages within the data view. They are very easy to use, easy to navigate. There is unfortunately no audit trails within the item history, but you can see the audit trail when you log into DF Explorer when you have synced the data. With regard to REDCap, audit roles are located in context, again, to the actual fields within the REDCap online database. REDCap also has database logs, but I found that those logs are really difficult to review and navigate. There is a lot of data usually to navigate through to actually see the change that was made. When it comes to the REDCap mobile app, again, you cannot see any data changes, at least in the history of the item in the tablet, but thankfully those changes are committed to the database, and you can see any changes in the REDCap online database. The next item that we looked at was user access management. So for DFdiscover, the user access is really role and rights based. I think most people know how that works using the DFadmin tool. The nice thing about DFcollect is that access is not managed separately. So access is managed for DFcollect via the same username and password, and it's also managed through DFadmin. When it comes to REDCap, the user access is again role and rights based, but it becomes a bit problematic when you utilize the REDCap mobile app. The REDCap mobile app is managed through an API, and to link your tablet, which contains the mobile app, to the online database, you need to scan a QR code that is presented on the online database with your tablet. So what you need to do is you first need to log into the REDCap database, and there you will get the QR code. From there onwards, you need to also log into the tablet with your own username. You then need to scan that QR code and link your online user account to your tablet user account. We found that procedure specifically for novice users are really complicated. And recently we actually had a big issue where the data manager logged into the online database, but he had the clinical team members log in with their tablets, and then they linked the accounts incorrectly to each other. So it's really easy for mistakes to happen, and then for data to be linked to an incorrect account. The other thing that is problematic that I would say for REDCap is that you need to have a separate PIN for the REDCap mobile app. And that is a separate identifier than your password that you use for the REDCap online database. So as I said, just to put this into context, for DFdiscover, your username and password is all managed through DFadmin, and it's all the same. But for REDCap, you need to link your tablet with the online database through this QR code. And then, unfortunately, you also need to have two separate identities. You need to have a password for the online database, and you need to have a PIN for the tablet. Talking a little bit about data entry, for DFdiscover, we have the option of online data entry using either DFExplore or the DFCollect app. Furthermore, for DFCollect, we also have the offline mode of data entry. When it comes to REDCap, we have the online data entry using the REDCap online database. But then when it comes to the REDCap mobile app, you only have offline. You unfortunately cannot enter data using the REDCap mobile app in an online manner. You can only utilize it in an offline manner. For data entry branching logic, for DFdiscover, really there is dynamic branching logic. It's available both in DFExplore as well as in the DFCollect app. Obviously, for DFexplore, when you have a background image that you loaded as a paper CRF, branching logic cannot be successfully applied. And I think we understand the reasons for that. When it comes to REDCap, obviously REDCap is an EDC system, so dynamic branching logic is really available to both the REDCap online database as well as the REDCap mobile app. Talking a little bit about data queries, and this is another item that is fairly problematic when you think about REDCap. So for data queries in DFdiscover, you have a full query workflow available. And there is a seamless sync between DFexplore and DFcollect when it comes to queries. So whatever query you raise in DFexplore, when you open up DFcollect, you will see that query within DFcollect, as well as in the other way around. If you have a query in DFcollect, you will see that query in DFexplore. When it comes to REDCap, there is a query workflow available. The query messages, unfortunately, are not programmable. So every single query that you want to send to the site, you need to type the query message out within the query that is destined for the clinical team. And then, unfortunately, REDCap mobile app does not support queries. So there is no sync between the REDCap online database and the REDCap mobile app. So if you were to raise a query within the REDCap online database, you can never see that query within the REDCap mobile app. And that is really unfortunate. And it doesn't assist with a functional query workflow to the site. Just to show this in context, so within DFcollect, you are able to raise queries. When you raise that query, you can see that query within DFexplore. Within REDCap, you have the ability to run queries as well. But unfortunately, the query message, the message that's destined to go to the clinical site, that query message is not programmable. So in DF setup, we have the ability to program a query by using DF add QC, and you can specify what message to send to the site. Within REDCap, you do not have that ability. So every single query message needs to be typed out for that specific situation. And that increases a lot of work. Talking a little bit about implementation of database updates while your study is in production. So for DFdiscover, we know that there is this linkage between a development instance as well as a production instance. And that really allows you to make changes within your testing environment, and you can publish those changes into your production environment. So you literally only do changes once, you test those changes, and you push them into production. The nice thing about DFcollect is that whenever you open up DFcollect in an online manner, all your study configuration is downloaded automatically to DFcollect on your tablet. When it comes to REDCap, there is unfortunately no linkage between the development and a production instance. And what we often needed to do was we needed to perform the updates in duplicate. So first, what we do is we perform the updates in our testing environment. We test them there, we make sure that they work. And once we find that they work, we then redo all those updates in our production environment. And we hope that we do not miss any changes and that we did it in the same way. Unfortunately, this type of duplicate work is really error prone, and we have made some errors. The other thing that is really challenging is the REDCap mobile app requires syncing of the data to the tablets prior to any database updates. So if you have any data on your REDCap mobile app on your tablet, you need to first sync up all that data to the REDCap online database. Then you can make changes in REDCap, and then you can push your configuration back to your REDCap mobile app on the tablets. So you really need to be thoughtful in how you make database changes for REDCap, while DFdiscover allows you to continue with your data and processing while you make changes in setup. Talking about the mobile app data sync, for DFdiscover, we know that within DFcollect, we can capture data in an online or an offline mode. When you do it in an online mode, obviously there is no sync. For offline, data does need to be manually synced when DFcollect is back online. There are two ways to sync data within DFcollect. Either you can open up the actual record and resave that, or you can utilize a subject by subject basis sync using the storage and sync facility. The nice thing about DFcollect is there are orange stars that show next to the actual pages which data still needs to be synced. When it comes to the REDCap mobile app, remember all the data is captured on that app in an offline manner. So data syncing is really inherent to the process. You must do it, because if you do not, data will remain on your tablet and never make it back to your online database. And this really requires a manual intervention from your user. Putting this into context, you can see the orange stars for DFcollect. This is really key to easily identifying which CRF pages needs to be synced back to the database. When it comes to REDCap, it really is not as obvious. What you have to do is you need to click on this send data to server, and then the screen appears with this widget that circles, and eventually the data will make it back to REDCap. Very importantly, if you have made updates to your online database and you have data that you are syncing from your tablet to your online database and you have not synced the configuration of the two, this is where you will find an error. The data will not sync back. And what you unfortunately will have to do in that case is you need to do an emergency data dump that's going to send an export of the data in a CSV manner, and you need to manually import that data into REDCap. Some other things that are really important to consider when you think about DFdiscover versus REDCap is the flow considerations. So obviously we know that DFcollect offers online and offline data capture. When we work with our sites, we usually want them to use online data capture. That is really preferred because we know the data is within the database immediately. When we utilize offline data capture, there are some important things to consider. If multiple tablets are used, there should be strategies to understand how the participant data will be collected across the tablets and synced. Remember, usually the data travels with the participant through the study flow and the assessments of that day. When you use separate tablets, you need to make sure that data is synced from one tablet to another if the tablets are utilizing an offline entry mode, because otherwise the data will not make it to the next tablet. Usually what we say for our sites is try and use DFcollect in an online manner. So when you think about REDCap and the mobile app, you do not have online data capture available on your tablet. So really, really importantly is how do you make the data flow between different assessments or different points in your clinical study when you need to continuously sync data back to the server and download data to another tablet. So it becomes really important to think how you will ensure that the data flows with the participant during his or her visit for that day. What we have often done in our studies is we have applied a single directional data flow. So what we tell our sites is enter the data on the tablet and only sync it one way to the online REDCap database. So just in summary, to recap what I just said. So validation protocols are not really available for REDCap. There are some on the community REDCap page, but they are for the older versions, and they really require additional baseline validation. For REDCap, query management within the REDCap online database is fairly poor. You need to retype those query messages every time. And unfortunately, within the REDCap mobile app, you do not have any query management available. You can never get queries in the REDCap on mobile app. So unfortunately, if you have any queries on the online database, you cannot sync those to the mobile app. Also, as I said, the mobile app is difficult to link to the REDCap online database. You need to use that QR code, and for novice users, this is often problematic. The REDCap mobile app does not allow offline data entry. So data syncing is required to be part of the process. And often data is not uploaded frequently, and that data remains on the tablet, and that's open then for data security or loss. Looking at the database updates, it really requires double implementation. You need to do it on a testing instance, and then you need to redo it on the production instance. There is no linkage that is provided between the testing and the production instance. I would say informally, we've made a decision that REDCap will not be used for INDs within our team. But I also have to say that there is a set of NIAID customers who still prefer to use REDCap, really based on previous experience. And we have found that the REDCap survey tool has functioned fairly well for their implementation. I'll stop there with some acknowledgements. Apologies for my video. I'm going to turn it on and see if it works better now. If it doesn't, let me know.
Thank you so much, Michael. I think that since you stopped the video, we all hear you better, at least better. So thanks so much for your presentation. Very detailed and in-depth comparison between us and REDCap. So we have a question in the chat, and the question is: have you had a chance to have the same user enter data with REDCap and separately with DF Collect?
Eric, we have never done that exercise. I'm sure it would be a fun one to do, but no, we have not.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank
Yeah, it was a shot in the dark. It'd be great to do that. That's understood.
Thanks, Eric. Any other questions or comments? Daryl, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So the title related to, don't let price be the only deciding factor. Obviously, REDCap is free to academic and nonprofit institutions, but do you think that there's significant added cost to running a REDCap study that might be hidden in labor costs, for example?
I knew you were going to ask this, Daryl, right? We've spoken about it before. And yes, so REDCap is free, but I say free because you do pay the price in the amount of resources that you need to apply to the project. Just thinking about query management, when you have the same query that fires 20 times over, and you need to individually type that message into each query. Like that's a huge amount of time that you just need to spend on simply sending a query to a site. So yes, there are, in my opinion, a lot of hidden costs. This was not a costing exercise, but it's obvious that there are hidden costs when you utilize REDCap, and not a system that has really been geared towards clinical data management.
Thanks, Michael. One last question. Apart from REDCap and DFdiscover, have you ever had experience of using Open Clinica Enterprise in your projects from Pontep?
We have used Open Clinica, and we still have a collaboration within Indonesia that utilizes Open Clinica. It really has a lot of history. They used Open Clinica also because it was free, and then eventually they moved over to the enterprise model that does have some costs allocated to it. I would hesitate to talk about a functional comparison between Open Clinica and DFdiscover because I haven't done it. But it's obvious that there are a lot of advantages towards DFdiscover. We have had various discussions with that specific team to move over to DFdiscover, but in our instance, it's been difficult because they have this history and all of this training with that specific system.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Michael, and thank you also for the questions. Thanks so much for your time.